And I know that all of us want to make sure that our children and our staff members and our families are being kept safe, especially with the current surge of the Omicron virus. So I was able to send a survey out to families to ask them to indicate which topics or things that they would want me to specifically address. So I've tried to include as many of those questions in this presentation as possible. The thing that we've learned, regardless of surges or lack of surges, you know, when we're in low surge time or low transmission time, is that schools continue to be safe spaces because of the many layers of protection that we have in place. So I caught COVID from home in a space where I'm not masked and we are not as careful as when we're in a school building. And I know that that's not always the case for everybody. And so it's something that we constantly have to take in mind, but we know that masking makes a difference. We know that social distancing makes a difference, hand washing, air quality, regularly cleaning and disinfecting spaces. We currently have in-school testing available for all students and staff. And over 90% of staff district-wide have been vaccinated. And then the district has also put in place contact tracing, and then has expanded access to vaccines, including dozens of CPS run events. So these are like multiple layers of protection that the district has put in place as a result of COVID-19. We have seen some of these things have rolled out a little bit smoother than others. And I recognize that we're not 100% where I'd like us to be in some of our areas, in particular with COVID testing. And contact tracing more recently as a result, but I'll talk about where we're at with each of those pieces. But generally speaking, we've done a really good job with all of the other layers of protection that we currently have in place. And as a result of that, we have not currently seen spread happen within the school building. Right now, it's going to be a little tricky to determine whether or not there's a spread because of the high number of community-based transmissions that are currently in place. So we know that as we're working against COVID, that there needs to be multiple layers of prevention put into place. And as we have higher rates of transmission, there's more holes in those areas of defense. And as we increase vaccination rates and increase testing, that helps us to close some of those holes. But we know that there's always going to be opportunity for some, transmission to happen. And so our goal is to minimize that to the greatest extent possible. Shannon, I'm not sure if you want to do the update on testing. I know that sound quality is a little bit tricky right now. So I can continue with this if you'd like, unless you want to jump in here.
I can try. Is this clear?
Yep.
Okay. So as we have been testing now for since September, what we have seen is an increase in registration from both the efforts of our staff at Peirce and their families as well, increasing. And we have testing available on Mondays. So 55% of our students are signed up for testing currently. 63% of the pre-K students have been signed up, and 75% of the staff have been signed up for testing. The pre-K one is really one to note. We have had a large increase, and we know that that is our highest risk population because our 4-year-olds do not currently qualify to get the vaccine. Staff members, as I mentioned, have been calling families since January 6th and have returned and continued since they have returned. So in the newsletter and the Peirce update each week, Ms. Zaimi has this list in there in order to sign your child up for weekly testing at school. I also have my email address in a couple different places, and I'm able to send this link directly to families. So CPS will continue their existing levels of testing, and for schools that were testing less than 10% of students per week, CPS will offer tests to at least 10% of the students. So as we had said earlier, we are at about 55%, and we were about 50% prior to winter break. So right now, Thermo Fisher has deployed testers on that percentage and have been in contact with them, and they know that we actually have a large amount of people registered for testing, and that's a very positive thing. We've had a high amount of registration over the past few weeks from multiple efforts. Currently, the scheduled testers are based on the numbers we had prior to winter break. Until they are able to hire more testers and readjust schedules to accommodate for rising numbers in actual participants, we will be able to test the same amount of people to accommodate for that. I have made a testing schedule to make sure that if a class is missed 1 week, that we start with that class the next week. It is not ideal, as Zaimi had said at the beginning. We are still working out some of these things with the company. I did have their territory manager here today, and he was able to see our high volume, and he sent some emails himself. So hopefully we are able to service everyone weekly, which is the ultimate goal.
Hey, Shannon, the sign up for testing, do parents have to sign up their kids every week?
No. So that is something that is in our FAQ, but the link is exclusive to our school, the one that we have. It has our 610122 number on it. Each school has their own exclusive link, so you need to make sure that you use your school's link, and you only need to sign up one time, and that is good for the rest of COVID testing. It is not a weekly sign up. Thank you for the question. So do teachers know who has signed up for testing? Yes, they do. They were given a list last week, and they used that to call the families that had not signed up yet to urge them to sign up if that was something that they would like to do. I just completed another update of the system, so I will be passing that out to them as well. And it is being updated in Aspen. Do we know if there's been a classroom transmission of COVID-19? We have not had any major outbreaks at the school level. Most of them have been community and family-based, and students have not been passing it to and from each other. We have heard that not all students are being tested weekly. How is it decided each week and which students will test? So I just addressed that a few moments ago. That we know that we have more signed up than we are able to test in the time frame. So I am taking that into account and making sure that we cycle through the classrooms, with also giving a little bit of priority to our pre-K students who are 4 years old and not able to be vaccinated. And if my child has COVID, should they continue to enroll in the weekly testing? Only enroll once.
I have a question for you. Can you if your child, if there's a potential exposure in the classroom or in the school, is every parent notified or only parents of unvaccinated?
So I know that Ms. Zaimi is going to get into contact tracing within the next couple slides, and that will be covered. I'm turning it over to you.
And I also just want to clarify from the other question in regards to if your child has had COVID within the last 90 days, should you continue to test? And the answer is yes, you can continue to test. It doesn't mean that you don't have to. But if you end up testing positive, you would want to check in with your doctor to see if it's possible to, have tested positive within the 90-day window, because sometimes there are the false positives, in which case the district would not exclude a student from school twice within the 90-day window. Shifting into vaccinations, Peirce percentage of students and staff members that have been fully vaccinated is significantly higher than the district. 96% of Peirce staff are fully vaccinated. We have a handful of people who have received medical or religious exemptions. And then 56% of all Peirce students are fully vaccinated. And it's important to note that that number includes 3- and 4-year-olds that are not currently eligible to receive the vaccine. If we look at when we exclude our 3 and 4-year-olds, that percentage increases to 63% of our students that are eligible for the vaccine are considered fully vaccinated as of last night. And every day that number is slightly increasing because we've got I think 46 students that are in the queue that have received their second dose, but have not yet reached that 2-week window. CPS has hosted 4 permanent regional sites for families and staff to continue to be vaccinated and boosted at. And there are 24 school-based health centers located throughout the city, and the district has hosted several mobile events. Peirce School was able to host 2 vaccination events, one in December and one in January. And we have indicated that we would like to continue to host those events and share resources within our own school community. So those families who are looking for a vaccine can go to cps.edu/vaccinations, and you can see the different options that are available within CPS. And then vaccines.gov provides opportunities for vaccinations that are not CPS sponsored. And then going back to the student data, 67% of our students have at least 1 dose of the vaccine. And then we have 46 students that are just waiting for that second dose to come through. And 56% of our 5 to 11-year-old students are fully vaccinated, and 78% of our students that are over the age of 12 are fully vaccinated. So we've done a really good job encouraging those that want to get the vaccine to have access to it. We have heard from several families that they are not interested in receiving the vaccine. And in those cases, we've tried to encourage the COVID testing so that there's some level of, precaution put into place. So one of the topics that's become pretty hot within the parent community is related to how the district handles COVID positive cases and what that contact tracing process looks like. Prior to winter break, prior to this major surge that happened over that 2-week window, the district was closing generally cases within 24 to 48 hours. And contact tracing is not managed at the school level, it's handled at the district level. But with the surge, the team was not able to manage the number of cases that are coming in. And we saw that happen right when we returned, where I was getting reports of positive cases, but nobody was turning those cases around. And then that Wednesday, we went into school shutdown. And so we were in a really ambiguous sort of state that first week after winter break. Once I saw all of that starting to unravel, I realized that I needed to do more on the school's end to try and get it ahead and communicate to families when there had been notification of a COVID positive case for both vaccinated and unvaccinated students. So once a report goes through the cps.edu/COVID results, I am pinged that there's a case that's been reported. And that's when the contact tracing team, which is a district level team, is supposed to work with me to identify who are close contacts. They share the communication that should go out, and they let us know where we're at in the stage. Some cases, it turns out that no notification is needed because the case is not actionable. And then in other cases, there are several close contacts that need to be notified. So then close contacts would be notified once that team has worked with the school to identify them. And those that are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated are informed that they should quarantine. The district does give principals the opportunity to flip a class to remote until an investigation is complete. And that's the process that we were using prior. But with the district being able to complete that contact tracing process within 24 to 48 hours, now we're having to use that process for a longer period of time. And I am now notifying what I see as close contacts in our system. And based on my conversations with families, I'm trying to identify who those close contacts are and send that notification to families. There has only been one case since winter break that's been closed. all other cases are still technically pending open. So schools where principals are not enacting flip to remote have a ton of kids that are sitting in their building that otherwise should be under quarantine. Whereas at Peirce, I've really been trying to make sure that our students are quarantining and that families know that they should test their child, 3 to 5 days after the last date of exposure. The district is looking at times when there might be 3 or more cases in a single classroom as a place where there's the potential for community, for school-based spread. And so in those instances, the CDPH would have to work to determine if there's a school-wide transmission or not. And then they would provide extra testing or take-home kits for students, provide extra staffing, including substitute teachers, and support staff, and they would work on creating enhanced cleaning and disinfecting beyond what they generally would already do. So some questions that have come from families are who's notified when a close contact has been present in the school. So currently, as of the early part of last week, all vaccinated and unvaccinated students in a classroom and staff have been notified. And then there has not yet been the community-based letters that had been going out. I would send them quite regularly when I got them from the district. Those have not started to go out yet. But generally, the community should also be receiving that information. Who's expected to quarantine after being in close contact with a COVID positive case? That would be students who are unvaccinated, definitely would need to quarantine. And then if there are students who are vaccinated but demonstrating symptoms, they should also quarantine. So we are notifying families, and then they're told if they need to directly quarantine. And then those that are saying that their child is demonstrating symptoms, we're asking them to keep their child home and test them in 3 to 5 days, just so that we can prevent further spread from happening. And then if there is more than one case in the classroom, will we be notified? Yes, you should be notified whenever there's any case in a classroom. How many cases have been reported since January 3rd? That's been a little bit tricky because we've received so many self-reports. So there's the dashboard for CPS that's currently up that will show, I think it's 24 cases that were reported since winter break. When I did my counting, I saw a little bit over 40, but it's a little bit tricky because I don't exactly know which numbers are being fed to the district. We have some students who are reporting, but they're not actionable cases. And then we have some cases that are going in as duplicates. Because a parent would have submitted it twice. So based on my internal tracking, I've counted, I think it was like 43 as of earlier today. And this is based off of numbers from January 3rd until January 17th. But that doesn't mean that all of those cases were actionable. And again, the district site is showing 26. So I'm not able to see what specific cases is being fed into the district's reporting document. And then how many students and staff are under quarantine? That number actually changes every single day, because some students may come off quarantine today and then they're back to school. And then another group of students is then asked to quarantine. Generally, I'm seeing anywhere from 20 to 40 students a day. Staff members are also fluctuating. I'm now in that count of staff members. I just heard of 2 staff members today that are also going to be under quarantine. I had a bunch of staff come off the quarantine list last week, like end of last week. I had more come off today. So that number is also constantly changing. I'd say we're ranging from 2 to 6 staff members under quarantine any day, and we'll see what happens as this week continues. Kristen, I see that you've joined us. Do you want to speak to masks right now?
Yeah, I can speak to masks. Thanks, Sam. And thanks, Lori. So CPS has provided us KN95 masks for staffs, and we will be receiving them for students. I actually was not in today. They were supposed to come Friday, but they did not arrive on Friday. So hopefully they arrived today and we'll be able to hand those out. The alderman did also donate 2,000 masks. And they were adult masks. And so they, the KN95, and we were able to hand those out to 4th through 8th grade students on Friday. As we awaited the KN95 masks from CPS. And the community and family members of Peirce have been very gracious and have been helping out with donating masks for our students and our teachers. So we really appreciate that. And I really just appreciate everyone reaching out and just how quickly everyone has been with helping support masks for getting KN95 masks for our students and our staff. Other than our KN95, just in general, CPS, we do always have disposable masks for adults and for students. There's a process for me to request any PPE that we might need. That includes gloves, masks, and wipes, among the few things that we can receive from CPS. It's my understanding that we will be able to continue to reach out to CPS when we need additional KN95 masks for students or staff.
And do you want to talk to the health screeners and the safety committee?
Yes, so for the health screeners, so we will be making that decision with it will be a building level decision that we will make with our safety committee. We meet with the safety committee each Friday to discuss different safety concerns or needs within the Peirce or within our building. And so we were able to bring, we have not voted yet, but we will be voting with the safety committee, but we have brought that potential we brought that idea back to our safety committee this past Friday. And that means that we just reinstate the health screeners similar to what we did last year when we came back in person. So we will be voting as a safety committee, and on the safety committee that we have different staff members, including CTU members and different staff members that represent our school. You can see here's a little bit more information about our safety committee. And you can see the different CTU members and different teachers that were on the team. Evan was supporting Jerry while she was out on maternity leave. We do have Mr. Carpahall and Miss Caro, myself, Lori, and Shannon are also on the committee. And yeah, as you can see, our non-CTU members here.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. One of the other questions that came up, I'm sorry, before I shift into the question is, as part of the CTU CPS agreement, Ms. Munoz spoke to masks and also to the safety committee and the possible reinstatement of screeners. Another mitigation effort that was put in place in that agreement was that there may be school by school remote learning, depending on the type of transition that's happened, depending on the type of transmission that may have happened within the community impacting the school or within the school community. So there are different levels of criteria. The first one being that if 30% or more of the school's classroom teachers, and so I'm not exactly sure how they're defining this, if it would be 22, which is including all of our teachers, regardless if they're a homeroom teacher, or 13 of our teachers that actually have a homeroom. So one of those two numbers, if we have that many teachers absent for 2 consecutive days as a result of COVID-19, then the school could flip completely to remote. I will say that it's possible that we could get to that number, but it's very unlikely. So even when we returned from break, I don't think we had more than 6 teachers out of the building that first week back from break. And we have not come anywhere near 13 or 22. But it's possible that it can happen. It's just very unlikely. But if that were to happen, the safety committee would have to convene and then make the decision to flip to remote. The other is that if 40% of our school's student population has been instructed to isolate, that the entire school could flip to remote. Or if 50% of the schools, if 40% of the school student population has been directed to isolate during a high surge time versus 50% when there's not a high surge time. Given our vaccination rates being over 50%, it will be very unlikely again that we will be in a position where our entire school would have to shift to remote learning. Again, not impossible, but very unlikely. And so what we're looking at Peirce is more of the classroom by classroom based decision on whether or not students in a classroom that are not vaccinated need to flip to remote. And when we're seeing these flips happen, we're seeing anywhere from 1 to 10 students on average that are flipping. It's rare that we're seeing any more than 10 students in a classroom that have to flip. Naturally in pre-K, that number would increase, but even in some of our pre-K classrooms, we have students that maybe were not present or some students who are fully vaccinated at this point. So if either of those conditions are met regarding teacher absences or student absences, then the safety committee will meet and decide by a majority vote. And then the school would remain in remote learning for 5 school days unless CDPH feels that we need to rethink that. So who is eligible for remote learning? It's any student that is under a CPS issued quarantine can engage in remote learning. Generally that happens through the flip to remote, or it may happen if a student has tested positive, or it could also happen for students who are not having to flip to remote. So there's sort of one caveat in this. If there has been the need for a classroom to flip to remote, but I'm a vaccinated student and I feel, okay, but I feel like because majority of my class is learning remotely, I would like to learn remotely. That is possible. And we have had families choose that as an option until the class returns. So there is a possibility that even though you're not technically under a issued quarantine, that you can still learn remotely. And then there's been a lot of question on whether or not the school year is going to be extended as a result of the work stoppage. And we don't know. As of today, the calendar is not extending, but the CEO will need to, what he's communicated to principals is that he would like to talk with families, talk with principals, and then see whether or not he'll make a recommendation to the Board of Education to extend the school year. But as of today, the calendar is staying as is. We know that air quality is a huge area of importance within our classrooms. And so there's been question on what the air quality looks like at Peirce. And we have air purifiers. We've asked teachers to crack their windows open, and our engineer is also able to regularly monitor the air quality. He's got a reader that he's able to bring into classrooms. And while there's like specific times of the year where there's an intentional check, we've had teachers say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with the air quality in my room. Can you please come and do a check? And he's been able to do that. And we've had no issues come from any of those checks. There's also designated time points over the year when the air filters need to be changed. And he's also been on top of changing the air filters. And then again, there's an air purifier in every classroom, including each lunchroom. And we've encouraged our teachers to crack the windows open. They don't need to be wide open, but they do need to be cracked open. And so in spaces that we haven't seen windows cracked, we've asked teachers to do that, but generally we're seeing that windows are cracked open throughout the school. There's various people on staff that you can go to if you have questions. Bibiana Andrade is our tech coordinator, and she's been supporting a lot of our tech distribution and supporting our hybrid instruction. Art is our building engineer and can support any questions related to air quality and ventilation. Shannon Giamicello, our resident principal, has been supporting COVID testing, vaccination events, and its student attendance. Sam Lee, our other assistant principal, is supporting, again, alongside of Ms. Andrade, some of our work with hybrid instruction and tech. Ms. Munoz supporting PPE, including masks, and then general school cleanliness. And then I am spending a lot of time on contact tracing. It's actually become almost a full-time job the last 2 weeks. And I'm just trying to clean up a lot of what we walked into after winter break. So that concludes this presentation. Javier, I'm not sure if we're going to shift into public participation or if the members of the council have questions.
We are moving into, sorry, not public discussion, LSC discussion. Matthew says he has a question.
That's good. Hey, Lori, one of the things that we heard was that some of the parents are not receiving some of those communications. So I don't know if it's because it's a small issue versus a community issue, whatever database is being used. Can you speak a little bit to that?
So if they are saying that they weren't receiving communication that first week after winter break, they're probably right. They were not receiving communication. If they're saying that there's still an issue after last Monday, the 10th, please encourage them to reach out to me because we're sending all communication via Aspen directly to families that are listed in Aspen, and we're making phone calls to students that have been identified as a close contact and have to quarantine. We're not calling vaccinated students, but we are calling students who are unvaccinated and who need to make sure that they know to quarantine.
The second question is there going to be another vaccine event just like the ones that we had in January and earlier this year?
We would like to. So there's been, there's a high volume of requests for these events. And so they're not able to do it like within the next couple of weeks, but we have indicated our interest in having Peirce as another site. We were able to vaccinate, there were approximately 100 vaccinations at each event.
And the other one is your slide deck that you just went through had a lot of questions that a lot of parents keep asking. You responded to those questions here live. Is there a way to create some kind of document that we could possibly share with everyone with all the answers? Because I think it would help in many cases.
Yeah, Leanne C. Wright has actually, she had brought that to my attention the other day. She started to create a structure and myself and my team are starting to go in and fill that in, and we would like to put that out to the community. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I hope you feel better.
I'm feeling great.
Even better. Any more discussion from members of the LSC? No. Thank you, Principal Zaimi. Next item on the agenda is public participation. I think Mr. Lee wanted to say something before we begin. Okay, Charlie's up there. If you'd like to ask a question or make a statement, can you? Well, let's start with since this is an in-person meeting, we'll start with the people in attendance in the room. And Tina is raising your hand and can you come up?
Okay, just so we can. Okay,
Or if you could,
yeah, if you don't, Principal Zaimi.
I'll move away. Yeah. You can speak into the speakers.
So I had a concern when Principal Zaimi was speaking about, or you were speaking about the safety committee and about the safety health screener, whether you guys are going to vote to implement it or not implement it. Where do parents get a seat at that table? How are you hearing parents and what they want? Is there anybody from the LSC, a parent from the LSC, that's able to bring a parent's voice to that? Because I think that's very important.
That's a good question, Gina. And when we meet on Friday, I can let the committee know that that's, a question that's come up from parents. I had shared an email that I'd received from a parent with the safety committee in regards to what they'd like to see with health screeners. And so I think that the committee should consider ways to get feedback from families in this case.
Yeah, I think we should implement it. In the perfect, I would love to see that. And to be honest and fully transparent, that's because my students are medically compromised. So to me, any additional layer that we can put, not only for my students, but for any students, I think then we can really say, and whether, I think, like they were saying before, that really is not an indicator. I think anything we can do to help families feel safer, whether that's the fact or not, we should be doing as a school. So, thank you.
I see that Robin Especia has stacked, but she's also submitted a chat.
Hi, can you please read my question? I'm losing my voice.
And actually, Shannon, I think you'd be a good one to answer this one as it relates to the first part, at least relates to the testing.
Sure, I'll read it since I'm right here. Testing. Thanks for Principal Zaimi, admin, teachers, and staff for the ongoing formal and informal updates and engagement with parents and caregivers around COVID-19 health and safety protocols. Testing. I understand that testing today was different in that multiple classes were in line to be tested for several minutes. Can you describe the process change and if my students are spaced to limit additional close contacts outside their current pods? I'll address that one and I'll read the second question. To address that question, we did have a slight hiccup with testing this morning that was no fault of any one entity. Our normal testing day is Monday. Due to the holiday, we were rescheduled. That posed a problem for Thermo Fisher in their scheduling as they were not able to give us as many testers as they normally did. We normally test from 8:30 to 12:30 at the main campus. By 9 o'clock, we had nobody arrive. I alerted CPS and this company. One person did show up. She did not adhere to our CART testing system that allows students to be tested outside of their own room. In order to not send her away and to test some of our staff and students, I compromised with her to sit at a table in the hallway. From there, I had a few staff members that I printed out a list and they were going to get children to allow them to test. This is not our preferred way. We have found much success with the CART system, pulling a student or two out at a time and then returning to their classroom. Due to this, the field manager did make an appearance today. We had a long talk and hopefully we will be getting more support very soon. So To answer the final question in your statement, the students were masked in the hallway. They were standing in the gym hallway, so it was not an enclosed space. They were no closer, farther away from each other than they are in the classroom, a lunchroom, or gym room. So they were just standing and waiting their turn. I'll read the second part, and I believe that's for the LSC. My last question is directed to Peirce LSC parent reps. Outside of LSC meetings, what are specific ways parent LSC reps have solicited parent feedback and communicated to parents, caregivers during the 2021-22 school year as it relates to parent caregiver concerns and impact of COVID-19 health and safety protocols to student academic success and wellness, as well as school resourcing? How have Peirce LSC parent reps specifically advocated to the district and local community on behalf of Peirce parent caregivers in support of student staff needs and concerns?
See. Outside of LSC meetings, what are the specific ways parent LSC reps have solicited parent feedback, communication? I don't think I know about any specific ways that we've solicited. Solicited implies that have we asked for parent feedback? And I think as parent reps, we have not actually done that. I mean, the point of the LSC meetings is to take public comment from members of from parent reps, but we do have the Peirce LSC email address that's monitored closely, and we try to respond to that as quickly as possible. Does anyone else have anything that they want to say?
I can add a little bit to it. I don't know if this is okay, but there have been a conversation with Matthew, Aisha, and I as we meet within the safety committee of the LSC, where while we were trying to look at student discipline numbers, we also realized that there's the health and safety concerns as it relates to COVID in our subcommittee meetings. And so we had quite a few conversations just in terms of measures that the school can be taking and like ways that I may need support or not. So I feel like there's been interest from the parents on the LSC to make sure that we have a safe school. I feel like the LSC is given a lot of sort of like trust and, you know, asked where they can be helpful and then made recommendations of things that we should think about. So like the push to have lunch outside, that was something that I heard a lot from families earlier in the school year. And we were able to take that feedback. That wasn't necessarily as formalized as a survey. Javier and I had a chance to speak last week and thinking about like this forum and ways that we can make sure that we were doing a joint effort between the LSC and the school, you know, administrative team to address the concerns of families. So while there may not be a lot of direct communication, I feel like there's been, I felt supported, and I felt like if there were things that I've needed, that the council has been there to support me.
Thanks, Principal Zaimi. Does anybody else want to respond? Okay, the next person on stack is Nicole Reneke.
Hi. First, just want to say thanks to the LSC for holding this special meeting. I think this was a really important conversation to have with our school community, and I appreciate the time and energy to put this presentation together and answer all our questions. I want to kind of echo a bit of what Gina was saying about the screener, the health screener. I'm in support of reinstating that. I think Gina said it perfectly. It's just we should be using every tool that we have, and that's an important one. And also had the same question that I got from a few pre-K parents that I know about, kind of where we can send our feedback, or where and how can we send our feedback to the decision makers on that health screener, because my understanding was that they were making a decision on that on Friday. So that'll be great to hear. And then I just had a question for Ms. Zaimi about the numbers that you provided that are on the CPS tracker versus kind of your own tracking. And you said there was 26 COVID cases at our school on the CPS tracker and 43 by your own numbers. And I'm wondering kind of what your take is on the CPS tracker and kind of what's accounting for that discrepancy. And then I guess if we think that that's going to continue to be such a large difference there, if we could maybe get better updates from you, I guess. I'm certainly one that's kind of glued to that CPS tracker. So if it's not accurate, I'd love to have those real numbers.
I guess to answer that question, Nicole, I need to understand what they're pulling.
Yeah.
How are they identifying the cases? Because I have quite a few cases that are not actionable. And then I have students who I've also noted as being under quarantine, but have not completed the self-report form because they're, for instance, an unvaccinated student who's been exposed by a family member. So that's where I have what I'm tracking, and even my list is not exhaustive because there's a lot of families who are keeping their children home and having their children quarantined, but not notifying the school. And so sometimes teachers will say, hey, I just heard about this child. Have you heard anything? And so there's been a lot of sort of cross communication with teachers and myself. And so that's why I need to understand what numbers are reading into the tracker to be able to better say whether or not it's accurate or not.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hey, Lori, what does non-actionable mean?
That would be, for instance, I'm a non-actionable case. So I tested positive for COVID, but I was not a close contact to any students or staff members. And so mine would be considered non-actionable because there's no need to issue quarantine for any students or staff members. It could be it's general, or it could also be a student who tested positive but was never present in the building physically. And so there's no action needing to be taken, but they're completing the self-report so that we have documentation of what that student's return date should be.
The next person on staff is John Espapia.
Hey, I have an issue with the LSC response to not doing anything over the past couple of months with sharing back out information to parents as parent reps. One of your responsibilities is to monitor the CIWP, and that includes physical and emotional safety. So I would hope going forward, you take a more active approach. It's more of a comment, not a question. Thanks.
Thank you, John. The next person to comment is Nicole Semler. Do we want?
I couldn't hear you, Javier.
Sorry, so there's not a stack per se, but there is a question in chat. How would you like to handle that, Principal Zaimi?
Can you say that again, Javier? Sorry.
Yeah, I can't tell if people have stacked or if they're just putting their questions in the chat. I'm wondering how you would like to respond to those questions.
Okay, so I see are you referring to the one from Nicole?
Yes.
Yeah, I can just read it if you, would you like me to just read it?
I think that might be best.
Okay, that's fine. So Nicole Stemler wrote, have there been changes made to the contact tracing process so that everyone vaccinated and unvaccinated gets notified in a timely manner and we avoid the problem we had after break? I want to reiterate that contact tracing is supposed to happen at the district level, not the school level. And so what I'm doing is through the flip to remote process, when I receive an actionable case, I am notifying vaccinated and unvaccinated families in a classroom regarding the potential for exposure. But that is an optional process that principals can employ, but I feel it's an important one and have started that. So as of January 10th, if not even slightly before that, all families should have received notification. The next one comes from Rebecca Wynn. PAC did a lot of this work last year to be in contact with families. We were part of why we got the outdoor lunch for students. I am joining PSO next month to try and see if we can continue these conversations. That's an extremely important point, that there was a lot of feedback from PAC and PSO and REP. So like there was a lot of joint work happening among community to, ask questions and make recommendations. I see John. I think John, did you have anything else? I think you have already participated. Okay, thank you, John. And then Jennifer, I'm not free to speak on camera, but if it's possible to take questions from the chat, I'd like to ask. The parent and school-led drive to sign students up for testing in the past 2 weeks was fantastic. I heard Ms. Gimicello say that testing capacity has not yet caught up to the new levels of students registered for testing. Will there be a way for families to know when that capacity has caught up? So the district is not increasing capacity. What they're doing is they're maintaining where we were at prior to the winter break. So prior to the winter break, whatever our levels were, the district has committed to maintaining that level from now through the end of the school year. In terms of communicating back, that's something, Shannon, I think you should think of, like, how can we publicly communicate the number of students or the number of people that engaged in COVID testing on a weekly basis so that the community can see what those numbers look like. We've been reporting on that during our weekly safety committee meetings, but I think that there's no reason that that information can't be included in my weekly Peirce update. So I think that could be one way of sharing to the community where we're at in terms of numbers.
By backlog, you mean?
So those on the list are usually tested, but you haven't gotten to.
So I guess that would also be like in the percentage. So I would take the amount that are eligible and the amount that were tested, and I would just give that percentage that were tested, which then the other half of that would be
For that week only?
for the week. Yeah. So
So you need
and I could separate that from staff and students. And I know that I had done that in the first couple LSC meetings, but
That was the final question in chat. Last call for someone to staff if they want to make a comment or a question. Okay, seeing no sentiment for more public participation. Moving on to the last item on the agenda, motion to adjourn.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
I know that Friends of Peirce just ordered 20,000 masks. Thank you very much for doing that. Do we know when approximately we will receive those? 1 week. Oh, never mind.
one box arrived already. They're arriving.
Okay. The other thing is about, this is a public service announcement, and I know, given the fact that the community here is fully plugged in, I'm sure you've seen a link being shared everywhere for households to order COVID tests. Those are pretty expensive here in the US, so I would encourage everyone to order them, even if you're not going to use them, maybe you can share them with folks around. Just wanted to mention that as well.
Matthew, can you send me that information so I can include it in my weekly newsletter?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to say again, I want to thank Principal Zaimi and the staff and the teachers. You know, I see that they're doing the best that they can. I see that the parents and the community supporting the work in the school. You know, there were some comments that were running around, and I'm glad that we were able to get together as a community to put some of those, to address some of those concerns and fears, but and you know what you can do, what you can change, what you have control of. We've seen the impact, and so thank you, you know, for putting our kids first, and thank the community for circling around each other in a time of need.
Agreed. Okay. It's done on motion to adjourn, so let's keep on talking.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? I saw Alyssa's hand, second. All those in favor?
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.